we are able to add, the more benefit all of you obtain, and then we grow together. I think the real intent of this meeting and for the business as a whole is that we grow together and we try to provide as much know-how, as much value as we can. The idea of this meeting per se is to talk a bit more about the budget changes that have recently been announced and how does that impact banking and investing for all of us. All of us here in the room are investors. By design, we have all done transactions with every single one of you, and it's to crack the code, try to unwrap what's happening. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of noise that we are hearing in the market. Plus also the budget announcement does open up some great opportunities, and we'll talk about what it's going to see. So from a budget point of view, if you really see, the lending eco landscape has actually shifted overnight by the announcement of the treasurer in terms of negative gearing, CGT impact. So that is a real meaningful impact on every single person as an investor, and some questions will become more clear in terms of the ambiguities. So just in terms of keeping it very simple, instead of going to the nitty-gritties of the law and the legislation, and the best part is it's not even implemented yet. Everyone from banking and any other atmosphere regulators, they are actioning this because they're supposed to action it from a responsible lending perspective. So for all of you, what it means, for any single investor in the room, it means the borrowing capacity has definitely taken an impact. How the banks have changed their calculations, how the negative gearing calculations used to help you with borrowing capacity. So some of those have taken, so in very simplistic term, on an approximate basis, everyone's borrowing capacity has taken a hit by 20%, which means we have to work through less and limited borrowing capacity, which also opens an opportunity around structures and companies. So the strategy is going to become a lot more important for every single one of us, irrespective of what income group we are in. Wherever we are in our investment journey, some questions will become really core about how to invest going forward. So this cannot be simple going to anyone or to a branch. We all need to work through this strategy. So that's one critical big change in terms of shift of lending capacity. Second thing is access to equity and cash out. There are policy changes. Lenders are tightening the access to cash. It's quite visible. Things which were very evident and easy. Banks are asking for more proofs in terms of the usability of the funds, all being driven by the gearing aspect of it in terms of how much they want to borrow you or lend you. Questions being asked around trust and company, and we'll try to unwrap that a little bit more. But again, at a very high level, this becomes a core conversation now, whether you should be using these structures. For a lot of investors who want to continue their journey, I think this would become a very predominant, very clear yes. With structure, there is no blanket answer. This is where this meeting is very important, because I am reading and seeing a lot of YouTube noise around Go company. That's how it is. But it can't be like that. It has to be still designed for your situation, your policy. So it's very critical to speak to your accountant or someone who understands the real impact and the overall life cycle, which is the most critical aspect. But yes, company or trust, both can work for you as long as designed properly. That's another underlying thing. Not every trust or every company structure will sail through the lenders, and possibly the approach should be to work on a rule of thumb basis rather than to try to work for any specific lender, because that would limit your options going forward. So that's another thing. In terms of, I think this slide is something we can always work faster. Why banks have moved, I think I've touched on this. The reason for them is responsible lending. We need to do the right things to the investors. And from a bank's perspective, they want to lend you what you can afford to pay you. So very rightfully so, they have come into action despite the legislations or the proposed legislations not enacted yet. But that is happening. Who is most impacted? I think this is where key thing is every single investor is impacted, especially so if you were relying on negative gearing for servicing, so that has taken a hit. If you are an investor relying on equity growth for your next acquisition, so that will dampen your spreads a little bit. Yes, if you are driven by your income and savings, that's still better, but equity access is getting a bit tighter. That's a clear shift in the banking. People who have been into investing but using wrong structure. So if you had a runway and you have exhausted 70% of the runway because you've bought everything in your personal name, possibly you are left with very limited runway. So hence, there's more need to discuss strategy now than before. There is no real room that side. and tax refunds to service the debt, which is more of the negative gearing part of it. So this is where the change is. What does that mean for you and every single one of them? And this is where it is critical in terms of 5 key changes. One of them I've been saying for the last 5 minutes, which is ownership structures, very, very critical in terms of how do you want to recalibrate your portfolio. So not necessarily everything that you're going to buy from this point has to be discussed, but also what you own. Is this the right time to recalibrate your existing structures is also absolutely critical, because the more you hang on to wrong side of the legislation, the expensive it's going to become in terms of fixing it later. Choice of lenders is going to be predominantly very important for you. It's an imperative question now, which lender to approach and in what sequence. So historically, before the legislative changes, or for people who have never used structures or company, pretty much the conversation was driven by the rate of interest, who gives you the lowest rate or a better valuation or a better borrowing. But this time around, the conversation would be, why should I go to a particular lender and in what sequence? And I can tell you practically from the experiences of thousands of transactions that we have done, a single wrong move going to a lender, if not sequenced properly, could mean you have exhausted 4 other lenders in the same time without even doing any transaction with them. So this is extremely critical to now understand and know the sequencing, and which is all about knowing the policies in there, knowing how to structure your transactions, and which lender would allow you the subsequent borrowing after you have done. So it's become a chess puzzle more evidently. Another thing that would be very critical now because of the negative gearing taken away from you guys is the cash flow strategies. So I think it will become imperative for you, for your structures to become positively geared from a cash flow. So you cannot no longer afford to have loss-making portfolios because there is nothing coming back from the ATOs. So the more you are able to work on high yield asset class, and if you're using companies or structures, let's assume every single structure is a bucket in itself, you need to acquire your properties or structure your transactions so that every single bucket is self-sustainable in itself, because you can't have leaking buckets. That would stop you from growing. So cash flow strategies would become super critical. New build is where I think regulations going forward going to allow you negative gearing. So that could be something very of importance if you are looking for negative gearing still as part of strategy. So that's one exception, and I think I would have another tax account to talk a bit more about what else. Fourth is execution. Execution is the key. So right now there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of confusion, but at the same time there's heaps of opportunities right now. From what we are seeing in the ground, we are seeing properties that were worth 2 million or 2.5 million are right now being sold or available for 2 million. So about a $500,000 discount available at a ballpark number. So every single asset class, the more mid-size and higher size, the more ability to negotiate, because people have been cut down with their borrowing capacity and sellers are already on their journey for the subsequent transaction. So there are a lot of opportunities to chase at this point where there is plenty of confusion. So think like this is a COVID opportunity for some of us to encash, provided we are sitting on borrowing capacity and access to money for the next purchase. So this is important. So all of us can get bogged down with the questions and the confusion, but then some of us could possibly use this to execute with the right advice, and that could possibly give you the best gains in the shortest possible window. Whether that exists for 3 years or 5 years, but it does exist right now to execute. So execution is the key in that sense. Next big thing is what we are saying in terms of, okay, it's not resi because negative gearing is taken off, then what else happens? And that's where we are seeing a shift, and we believe that shift will continue towards commercial asset class, whether it's commercial properties or acquiring businesses. And to give you more insights on that, I've got a great team of ANZ commercial and I've got CBA commercial. They'll talk a bit more. So resi is something we all kind of know because we have done it many times. Commercial is an ecosystem that is less explored, it's more ambiguous, and let's try to see how ANZ and CBA at a high level give us more ideas. And while I'm yet to introduce the panel, but I have Penny also from ANZ. She is a property economist at the national level. She will give us a view of the world. Penny, we will have lots of questions for you, my friend. And I think the next part is why lending as an advisory piece of work becomes more critical, because no longer lending is going to be vanilla. It has always, we have been very clear in terms of finance is a complex and strategic subject. It's less of speaking to anyone or going to the branch. If you want real long-term view and advice, best outcome, you still need to speak to people who have been in that world, who understand the complexities. And that's where strategy, structure, policy, sequencing, and execution. So these are fundamental 5 pillars which would make or break your journey in our sense. This is how you need to structure your transactions and your thinking. And I think we've always said, do not take a vanilla one transaction view, take at least a 5-year view or a 5 transaction view of what you want to do. That allows you to roll it back and have a proper strategy. So in terms of your next steps, I think before you make any choice around purchase, refinance, you should have that call with your accountant or with us or with any other person who understands banking and can help you is critical. I think going back to the drawing board and get your strategy in place first before you get into the FOMO is important. Execution is important, but without strategy, you might axe yourself again. This is what we exist at TransformBiz. This is what we try to do. We try to track policies, try to track regulations, and then try to convert that into what it means for your capacity to buy, what structures would rely on you. We go very deep into the subject of company, trust, personal name. We try to unravel all those complexities. And one thing, again, I reiterate, it's not one approach fits all. It has to be designed to your family circumstances, how you position, what's your view on the properties, and where is your next generation coming in. So answer cannot be one tick box for everyone. That's not how it is. And we are into the advisory role first. We always say we write laws for the fact that we love writing laws, but without strategy, it's more of an admin job. So you need to have strategy on your side, and that's where we come in, because we are on the ground 24/7. We are investors ourselves. We deal with purely investors. My biggest portfolio is investors. I'm the one who possibly rarely do first home buyers. Every single client here and who is not here is sitting on 3, 4, 5 plus properties, and we are still borrowing. So this is where we understand the complexities, and we want to help you rightfully. One thing, we don't want to throw anyone under the bus. We want to do things absolutely which is right to your circumstances. This is the next phase of what we are going to do as part of the business. So we have done heaps of resi, we have done heaps of banking. I think where the next solution offering for us as to you for clients is where we possibly will start working with you on business acquisition or commercial side of things. So we are building our know-how, we are building our network, and we are building our team to help you with commercial transactions, whether it's identifying the strategy or building the strategy, finding the right lender for your next purchase, whether it's a commercial property purchase or a proper business purchase. Everything happens in the market. How do you want to structure or package those deals? So you don't have to get documented by the size or the value of the property or the transaction. There are ways to structure the deals and the valuation in terms of what is the right dollar that you want to offer for your next acquisition. For us, I think this is the last bit for us as TransformBiz in terms of what we are trying to do for everyone in the room and outside is we want to bring the whole ecosystem to you. We just don't want to see and be a transactional one part of the wheel, one spoke of the wheel. We want to help you with the entire wheel, whether it's structure, scale, exit, operational support. So we are trying to build the whole ecosystem for you so that you're rightly served, conflict free. I think this is pretty much the last thing. If I have to say anything from a banking perspective, whatever you have built so far, you have done absolutely right in some shape and form by the rules that existed. Now the game has changed. So the strategy that was done previously or that has worked for you previously might have to get reinvented in some shape and form. So that's one thing for all of us to take back is what has worked in the past might not necessarily continue. So there's a shift in mindset. In terms of that's about us. Thank you so much. so I'm open to